Now on Talking Solutions, welcome back, Erin Breen from the Vulnerable Road Users Project.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Erin, I wish I could say that the reason why you haven't been in is because pedestrian safety is no longer an issue here in the Valley.
Yeah, I wish we could say that too.
I'd like to just shut this whole thing down.
Yeah, not bragging because it still wasn't great news, but 2018 was much better than 2017. But 2019 started off with horrific numbers.
I heard about the 2017 numbers that 100 pedestrians killed that year.
That was the official number for the state of Nevada. Each state collects data on guidelines established by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration so that we're talking apples to apples. And in the national database, if you die 31 days after being in any kind of a crash, you don't get counted as a traffic fatality. Oh. So the 100 official number was actually much worse than 100 because, a lot of people live for 32 days or 64 days, whatever it might be. My contention has always been if you didn't get in the crash to start with, you wouldn't have died, So the official number's bad enough, but the actual number was even worse. And we don't count you on private property. Isn't that terrible? So, yeah, we have a big problem in the beginning of the year, and like a rocket. Vulnerable road users. We've had bike fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, and motorcycles. That is not the majority of the road users. And if vulnerable road user safety is not on your radar, you really don't pay a lot of attention. You pay attention to the mode of travel that you use.
All about me.
Yes,
that's what drivers are thinking. I'm in a hurry. I got to get here. Yep. I got to go now.
That's that nasty little human trait, But the other nasty little human trait is we all take the path that is the easiest, and it causes us to do crazy things.
I can't imagine how a person that strikes someone while they're driving and injures or kills them, how do you ever recover from that? How do you ever mentally get over it?
Terry, I tell people all the time, when we look at pedestrian data, when we look at just straight crashes, so pedestrian crashes, half the time it's the driver's fault, half the time it's the pedestrian's fault. When we look at fatal crashes, and I wish I didn't have to say this, but I do, 3/4 of the time it's the pedestrian's fault. They're crossing most often where they don't belong on a dark street, wearing dark clothing, and drivers never see them. But I also try to impart to drivers that just because it's not your fault doesn't mean you'll say, oh, well, that was a bad day. No, I've met way too many drivers that it ruins their lives. And I guess the biggest news is that we allow people to drive in a manner that could put you in that position all the time. So I teach this class, if you get a ticket, either as a pedestrian or as a driver who violates a pedestrian law in Clark County, and you go to justice court, they give you the opportunity to have your fines and fees waived, but I get 3 hours of your time. So this is the most shocking thing to drivers when I say, if you drive a Mercedes-Benz that has the best headlights on the market, it illuminates 175 feet in front of your car. Average posted speed limit in Clark County is 40 miles an hour. So at 40 miles an hour, you're traveling 66 feet per second, and the average reaction time is 2.5 seconds. So you've eaten up that 175 feet in front of your car by the time you react. So the reality is, it's called overdriving your headlights, meaning you can't see in time enough to be able to stop for it. And my opinion is that we set drivers up to be in the position of taking a life.
Well, and from the perspective of the driver's not helping either. Because I've said many times when we've been in this studio before that the posted speed limit, which already is high enough, is only a suggested starting point.
Well, that is indicative of something that I'd love to spend a couple minutes talking about, and that is contrary to what people believe, we need more cops. And the reality is that police officers go crash to crash to crash responding, and they don't have time to get out and do that all-important education. And so we have slipped into this mode where drivers feel, and I wish I could say they're wrong, but they feel like if I'm only going 10 over, they're not going to stop me because while they have me stopped on the side of the road, 30 over is going to blow past them. And you can see the logic in that. And unfortunately, so can drivers. We have a fast environment in our town. We've built it fast. People travel on it faster than what's posted, especially in urbanized Clark County. City of Las Vegas is doing some innovative things. Henderson is doing some innovative things to literally force cars to slow down. And I think if we compare critical and fatal crashes from one to the other, you're going to see that there's a difference.
That it does matter
Yes.
that they take these steps.
Yes.
When you talk about the fact that it would be great to have more police officers to help enforce our traffic rules, let me get on my soapbox for just a second. Running red lights. I just get so angry because I'll be driving somewhere, usually on Durango, and I'll be stopped at a light because the light's turning and I see somebody blow past me. I'm
accelerating.
like, how can you do this? You now are risking lives of the people that are trying to legally take advantage of the green lights going the other direction.
Right.
People get killed.
Well, and it's not the idiot that's blowing the light that gets killed. It's the innocent person that's just taking off. And that's that physics lesson. So the inertia is on the side of the person who not only is blowing that light, but they're accelerating through that light. They're going much faster than the person who's just taking off. And if you live in this town and you drive in this town and you take off on any green light without looking to the left, it could be your life. We have a terrible red light running problem.
Erin Breen is with us today on Talking Solutions from the Vulnerable Road Users Project. Erin is always our favorite guest to talk about the very important topic of pedestrian safety, which is a huge issue here. You know, Erin, my husband, he always reminds me, and we always say to each other, be careful. Everybody who sees me here at work when they leave for the day, the last thing I say to them is, be careful. When my guests leave downstairs after they've been in studio with me for the show, I say, be careful. And I also remind them, it's not you. There's a lot of idiots out there. You have to watch for the other people on the road.
That's so true. That's so true. And we've been trying to get people away from the vernacular of saying someone was in an accident and to use the word crash, not because, of any ulterior motive other than literally trying to change your mindset, because crashes are not accidents. One of the parties does something that leads to that crash happening. And, when I say to people, it can be as dumb as not having enough air in your tires. If you don't know what to do when you have a blowout in your car and you don't know how to drive, well, you're a crash waiting to happen that could take someone else's life or your own. If you're driving without the benefit of that crazy little seatbelt in your car, people think it only has to do with themselves. But your ability to control the vehicle lies with if you're firmly in your seat. If you have to swerve for a reason and you're not belted and you go flying across the seat, now it's my problem if I'm driving next to you. So maybe 1% or less of crashes are actually accidents, which we would consider like, act of God kind of thing. And so we're trying to change people's thought process and understand that this does have something to do with me, and it might not be my fault. But the other thing that people do is they drive to the hood of their car. When, a fatal investigator, one of my favorite people in the whole world, doing a lecture to a group of teachers who were teaching kids their 30-hour driver safety course. And he asked this whole room of professionals, so what are the two things that'll save your life? And everybody does the same thing. We talk about seatbelts. We talk about don't drink and drive. We talk about put your cell phone away. And while all of those are good traffic safety behaviors, the two things that will save your life are time and distance. And it's the not getting in the crash. So if you have enough time to react and distance to stop, you avoid the crash. And the only way you get that is by watching well downstream, which gets more and more difficult all the time, because if you're in a standard sized car and there's a city on wheels in front of you, it's difficult to see, 6 or 7 car lengths in front of you.
Sure.
But you got to be able to see what you're going to have to react to. And it doesn't matter what kind of road user you are. If you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, a motorcyclist, or a driver, time and distance is what's going to save your life. And the number one way we get that is by being realistic and giving ourselves enough time to get where we're going. So we're not tempted to do stupid things like blow red lights when we have plenty of time to stop for them. As a society, all you have to do is be driving down any street that you're used to driving on. If there's a police officer anywhere in the vicinity, you will feel it. You'll be going, what's the difference on this road? And usually what you're saying is, why are people going the speed limit? This is nuts.
Oh, what is this all about? Speed limit.
And then sure enough, there's a police officer. So we know that we're breaking the law. We choose to do it.
Erin, you grew up here in Las Vegas. I've been in town for nearly 27 years. And just during the time that I've been part of Las Vegas, the growth is crazy.
It is crazy.
I mean, in a good way.
Right, it's a good thing, yeah.
But when I first got here to drive to the other side of town, a 20-minute estimate was a real thing. That was the summer that Clark County was just approaching 1 million.
Yeah.
Now we're going on, 3? And as we keep growing and growing and growing, people are still saying, I got to get across town. I got 20 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, the 20 minutes that worked doesn't work now.
No. And we could talk forever about this subject. People refusing to give up their single occupant vehicles are the biggest culprit in that. And we can't just keep building our way out of growth. Growth is a good thing. Urban sprawl, maybe not so much. And we're running out of land to keep spreading out. We're going to have to start rehabbing and going up. But if people continue to want to drive themselves everywhere, we just can't keep building the way that we have. So Project Neon is going to wrap up. How long will it be till it's at capacity? You remember when 95 was first finished and it was like, oh, this is so awesome.
It's been widened. It's so much better.
Yes, and now there's a traffic jam there every day. We've got to do more to get people out of their cars, and that's why this whole pedestrian issue is so important. It's better for your health. It's better for the environment. It's better for everyone. It's better for your mental health. Yet, if you turn on the news and the lead story on the news is the latest person that died on the sidewalk, in a crosswalk, or crossing somewhere where there was no crosswalk in a reasonable distance. And that's the other thing that we have not kept up with, is the whole vision of how we build our roads, and that we don't give pedestrians enough places to cross the street. And the limited places that we do give them, drivers aren't used to seeing. Whereas if we gave people more reasonable spacing to cross the street, drivers would get used to seeing that and understanding their responsibility is to look and see if there's someone waiting to cross the street and stop for them. It's such a simple concept. We just don't seem to get it.
Well, we're going on these roads where the speed limits are already generous, should I say.
Yeah.
So we're going at a pretty good clip. Most people that I see, I'm not going to say some, most people that I see are going faster than that.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, there's all these different visual things we need to be looking at. And as a defensive driver, we're looking ahead of where we are. But are you also looking on the sides where the crosswalks are coming into view and the people who are in vain trying to get across the road, they're waiting there.
But 30 miles an hour, your vision picks up what is there to be seen, but that's where it starts to narrow at 30. So by 45 miles an hour, and there's no way for you to test this because your brain won't allow it, but research shows at 45 miles an hour, you're not picking up the outside lanes, let alone the person waiting on the sidewalk to cross the street. So when drivers say, I didn't see them, they're telling the truth. They didn't, because they were going fast enough that their brain, in order to focus on what they were doing, took out all this stuff on the side and narrowed down your field of vision. As a pedestrian waiting to cross, you've also got to understand how long it takes a car to stop. Pedestrians need to be realistic that on the streets like we have, at the speeds that people are going, they need a football field's distance. So once they can see you, that whole stopping factor, cars don't stop on a dime. So I always tell people, if you see headlights at night, stay where you are. Don't try to cross the street, and never assume that a driver saw you and that they're going to let you go. Even on a green light, if you're at a signalized intersection waiting to cross the street and the walk dude comes up in the ped head, never assume that there's any magic there. You got to look to your left and make sure, A, that no one's going to blow the red light, because that person for sure is going to take your life, and B, that right-hand turning driver understands that they don't get to turn right until you've made it to the center line. So that right-hand turning driver on some of our streets, you can make that right-hand turn at such a high rate of speed, you can easily kill someone.
Yeah, and I've seen people make that turn fast.
Yep.
Fortunately, there was not someone in their path. I would not have even wanted to witness it.
Right, no. And I think pedestrians are far too wary. It's good for them, but it's sad that they're so aware that right-hand turning driver could take their life.
Well, the difficulty for pedestrians to safely navigate our community in the streets and the crosswalks is almost like we're putting a damper on the idea that you should be outside and navigating by foot and getting somewhere on your own power. But I've thought, gosh, if I could just give them all lighted vests that flash And if I could just make all the crosswalks have a little button that you could push that would make the signals start to flash. And I know that those are in some places, but not everywhere. And I know
You're
that's
right,
not
and we
going to
need more of
change.
them because those are so effective. And they're not very expensive. On a street like Durango, they're expensive because they can't just put them on the sides of the street and in the center. They've got to come out overhead. So you're still using those big mast arms. That's where the expense comes in. But those LED little flasher lights, the wig-wag ones that we've had for so long, the wah-wah on-off ones, your brain is so used to those that they don't really register in your brain. But those new little LED, when they first came out, they called them a stutter flash. I think that's very descriptive, and they're never the same. So your brain never gets used to seeing them. And they're so bright that you can see them from far away. So I hate to say this out loud because I always say it's tempting the fates, but fatalities on Boulder Highway were down last year.
Well, they've been working
Thank
on
God.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So the most notorious crosswalk in all of Nevada was the one at Boulder Highway in Sun Valley, which is that little crosswalk in front of the East Side Cannery. Far and away the deadliest spot for pedestrians and also for people in cars. There were quite a few people over the years that had been killed in that intersection. So NDOT put in the flashers, closed off the left turns, and put in that median, we call it the Danish offset, where it forces the pedestrian to turn in the center island and face traffic to try to get you to make eye contact with drivers.
Right.
That alone was responsible for the reduction in fatalities on Boulder Highway. 8 more of those are coming before the end of the year.
I'll have all the links and everything on the Talking Solutions Facebook page, along with a podcast of our discussion today. It's Erin Breen from the Vulnerable Road Users Project.
There's so many layers of traffic safety, but they all come down to no matter what mode of traffic, no matter what topic we're discussing, it does all come back to personal responsibility and understanding that life is fragile and that they aren't numbers. We talk about 100 people, but can you visualize 100 people? Can you understand how many lives those 100 people...
The families, the coworkers, the friends, the neighbors.
Devastation that 100 fatalities causes. I say to people all the time, what would happen if a 747 fell out of the sky twice a week in the United States? What would we change? And I use as a great example, what happened when there was E. coli in the lettuce?
We pulled all the romaine.
Yes, because maybe someone was going to get sick and someone might potentially die.
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't that equate to how we travel and the stupid positions that we put ourselves in? And we all know it's because we're human and humans do dumb things and we never see ourselves in that equation. But boy, is it dangerous not to.
Erin Breen, on Talking Solutions, we always ask, what can we do to help you?
Well, we touched on it a little bit. I always say to people, the number one thing you can do is to give yourself enough time to get where you're going and be realistic so that you're not tempted to be that idiot that's putting your life and everyone else's in jeopardy. And the other thing I always love to point out about that is that idiot who could have just taken your life, weaving in and out of traffic and driving like a moron, he's at the next red light with you.
Yes.
They haven't gotten anywhere. But as a driver, you can be completely sober. You can put your seatbelt on. So 2017 was off the charts for pedestrians. 2018 was off the charts for motor vehicle occupants in Clark County. Those fatalities rose 42%. And lo and behold, unbelted fatalities also rose 42%. Yeah, what could the correlation be there? So as a driver, be a responsible driver. Put your phone away, wear your seatbelt, be sober, give yourself enough time to get where you're going. As a pedestrian, light yourself up. Wear white or bright clothing in the daytime and understand at night doesn't matter. You got to have lights on you, reflectors on you, something to give drivers the opportunity to see you.
Think about what we're doing.
Yeah, save your life. That's the bottom line. That's why I love this job.
I want you to work yourself out of your job.
I do too. And it's funny, the people that you actually connect with that get it, they get it forever, which is why I love that court class. Can't tell you the number of people who I run into in different places and they go, I took your class last year, and they tell me whatever it was that they did that they have not done again.
I enjoyed your class. I learned so much. I'm never coming back.
Exactly.
Good. That would be a win.
I used to tell teenagers, I'm a really nice person. Your parents don't want to meet me.
No, they don't. But we want you here anytime. Erin Breen,
Thanks so
Vulnerable Road Users Project. So appreciate you joining us here on Talking Solutions.
I appreciate you having me.
Come back soon.
I will.